Hi everybody, good morning. It's me, Omar Al-Ayed, grade 8 teacher. Welcome to my lovely subject literature again. I hope you guys stay well and doing well. I hope we can get back to school as soon as possible because we really miss you a lot. And I hope this pandemic which outbreaks goes away as soon as possible. Today, I'll be giving you two comprehension passages. They are unseen passages, by the way. I mean, these two passages you've never seen before. First of all, let me just remind you with the main skills, main objectives that we're gonna focus on in these two passages. We're gonna focus on number one, the author's purpose. Number two, the differences between biography, memoir, and autobiography. At least we're gonna have a clue about what is meant biography, what is meant by memoir, what is meant by autobiography. The third one, which is the most important one, it is citing textual pieces of evidence to support analysis and events. So you're gonna be introduced to how to cite some textual pieces of evidence to support your own analysis or your own answer. Okay? Before we get started, let me just tell you one important strategy whenever you have reading comprehension like that. You don't need to read the whole passage word by word or line by line. We're going to just follow up these two reading comprehension strategies, skimming and scanning. What is skimming and what is scanning? Okay, let me just explain them to you. Skimming, when I say skimming, it means reading rapidly in order to get a general idea or an overview. So, this text, for example, if you want to know the main idea of the text, you don't need to go through the text word by word or line by line. You can just read the first two lines or the last two lines of a paragraph so that you can get the general idea or the general overview. The second strategy, which is called scanning. What is scanning? Simply, scanning is reading rapidly in order to find some specific facts. Like when you are looking for the statistics or numbers or percentage. So you are looking for some specific facts here. So you are scanning. You are scanning. Okay. To recapitulate what we have said, no need to read the whole text word by word or line by line whenever you have a text like that, an unseen passage like that. All what you should do is to use these two strategies, skimming and scanning. Also, sometimes the question has got a hint or a reference to which paragraph are you going to refer. In this case, you don't need to read the whole text or the whole paragraphs because the question might have some expressions like in paragraph 1 or in paragraph 2. It's a reference. Or according to paragraph 1, according to paragraph 2. Also, it's a reference. So in this case, we don't need also to read the whole text or the whole article. All what we should do is to go to the specific paragraph and to figure out about the answer. Is that clear? Okay. Let's now guys talk about the author's purpose. First of all, have you ever heard about the author's purpose? Honestly speaking, if you have heard about the author's purpose, it is easy for you to understand what I'm saying right now. If not, it's your chance to listen up carefully and to understand what is meant by the author's purpose, because it is really important. It's a crucial for you as a reader and as a writer. If you want to write something, you need author's purpose. If you want to read something, you need author's purpose. Okay. Okay, again, what is an author's purpose? An author's purpose, or the author's purpose, when we talk about author's purpose, we're talking about what the author's goal. So, when you read a text or when you write something, you should ask yourself a question. Why did the author write this? Or why did I write this? There should be a purpose behind reading or behind, let's say here, writing. Actually, there are three main purposes for passages. Let's now have a clue about these purposes. These purposes can be very easy as pi. You know pi, yeah? P stands for persuade. First of all, do you know what is meant by the word persuade? When I say persuade, persuade means to convince, to change someone's mind. I stands for inform. Inform here to give information, like scientific facts or statistics or percentage and something like that. E stands for entertain. When the author's goal is to entertain, to give the readers some joy, some happiness while they are reading. Okay, let's now begin with the first one, to persuade. This purpose is used generally in persuasive writing, because persuasive writing, in one way or another, expresses an opinion and attempts to convince the reader, to change the reader's mind. For example, the advertisement. All the advertisements, okay, are built upon persuading. So the main purpose of the advertisements is to persuade. The second purpose, to inform. This purpose is generally used in informative writing, because informative writing provides the reader with what? Information about specific topic, like for example giving the reader some facts, some statistics, some percentage about the subject. For example, the biography or the autobiography. Why biography or autobiography? Because they are mentioning or they are talking, they are recounting actually someone's life, someone's, let's say here, real personal experience in his life. So they are giving some facts about someone. When I'm talking about biography, when I'm talking about autobiography, he is here when you are talking about, okay, yourself. Okay, here the last purpose is to entertain. Usually this purpose, okay, you could find it when the author is writing, or using descriptive writing such as poetry, or narrative writing such as stories, novels, dramas, and so on. That is all about the author's purpose. I hope you could understand me very well about the author's purpose. So, whenever you write something, you should ask yourself, what is my own goal? What is my own purpose? Why should I write this? Okay? When you read something also, you should ask yourself, why did the author write this? What is his own purpose? What is his own goal? Okay? That is all about the author's purpose. Let's now talk about the differences between biography, autobiography, and memoir. Okay, here we have biography, memoir, and autobiography. Biography, as you can see, it's a true story about a real person's life long ago. And we know that biography is written by someone or someone else. Memoir, it is when the author writes about a personal memory, his own personal memory. And memoir is written by the author who had the memory. Autobiography, as you can see here, and as it is stated over here, it's a true story about a real person that wrote their own story about their own life. And it is always written by the same person the story is about. Like what we have today. Here we have this passage is like an autobiography. Here the author recounts the time she and her mother and siblings stayed behind when her father left to the United States. Okay, let's now read the first four lines that are talking about the two unseen passages. Today, you will read passages from two non-fiction accounts of immigration. One is from an autobiography in which the author recounts the time she and her mother and siblings stayed behind when her father first immigrated to the United States. The other one is from a magazine article and tells about conditions for immigrants on arrival in the United States. So let's begin with the first unseen passage, which is an autobiography from the Promised Land by Mary Anton. As I told you, guys, we're not going to read the whole passage word by word or line by line. We're going to just go to the questions, read the question, read each question and the alternatives, okay? Then we will go back to the text, skimming, scanning, and finding the answer, okay? But for the time being, I'm going to read just the prologue or the introduction of this passage. Mary Anton spent the first 13 years of her life in the city of Polotsk, in what is now the nation of Belarus, and was then a part of the Russian Empire. After her mother had to close the retail store started by Mary's grandfather, Mary's father was forced to travel to find work. Finally, in 1891, he left Polotsk for the United States, where he worked to save enough money to bring over the rest of the family. Okay, together let's go to the questions. Read the first question here. The first question, part A. In the passage from the Promised Land, what does the word America come to mean for young Mary Anton after she gets her father's letter? Number one, a distant, unfamiliar place. B, a land of hope and promise, a place she resents for robbing her of her father, a place she thinks will solve all of her family's troubles. Let's now double check. Okay, I want you guys here try to skim here, or let's say here try to read. If you go to paragraph 2 and if you read it, read 2 and 3, just try to skim here. Okay, I think you couldn't find here the answer when you were skimming paragraph 1 and 2. Let's now move down to 3. Take your time, skim paragraph 3 as quick as possible. It's easy for you to find the answer here. If you read the last line here, or let's say the last line of the first paragraph, if you hear, read it. Oh, it's not like here, not here, yeah. Okay, I mean here the first paragraph, because this is not okay, by the way, the last paragraph. This is the first paragraph, this is the second. Yeah, so if you go here, you could find it, you could easily find it. If you read it, my father was inspired by a vision. He saw something, he promised us something. It was this America, and America became my dream. So if you go back to the question itself, if you go back to the question itself, let me just remind you here with the question. In the passage from the Promised Land, what does the word America come to mean for young Mary Anton after she gets her father's letter? What do you think? What do you think, guys? Is it here? Is it a distant or unfamiliar place, a land of hope and a promise, a place she resents for robbing her of her father, a place she thinks will solve all of her family's troubles? Definitely here the answer would be the alternative B, a land of hope and a promise, because she says here, as you can see, she says, America became my dream. So here, America represents her dream, her hope, her promise. Is that clear, guys? Let's go to question number 2. Which quotation from the passage best supports the answer to part A? Let's now read these alternatives. My father was carried away by the westward movement glad of his own deliverance, but sore at heart for us whom he left behind. I was used to his going away from home, and America didn't mean much more to me than Kherson or Odessa or any other names of distant places. Paragraph 2. Or, but I heard something as we read the letter together in the darkened room that was more than the words seemed to say. There was an elation, a hint of triumph, such as had never been in my father's letters before. Paragraph 3. Or, my father was inspired by a vision. He saw something. He promised us. It was this America, and America became my dream. Paragraph 3. What do you think? Yes. Together, let's answer this question. If you go back to this paragraph, when he says, my father was inspired by a vision, he saw something, he promised us something, it was this America, and America became my dream. Here, what do you understand here? Okay, let me just tell you. For you and I, together, we understood something, that America becomes in one way or another her own dream, her own hope and promise. So the question here, number 2, as if you are asked, cite textual evidence to show that America in one way or another represents a land of hope and a promise. So we are coming to know how to cite textual evidence. Is that clear? Let me just say it again. As if the question asks you, cite textual evidence to show how America in one way or another represents a land of hope and a promise. So you could go back to paragraph itself here, and you could underline, you could quote, this piece of textual evidence. No, not here, sorry, actually here. Okay. My father was inspired by a vision. He saw something. He promised us something. It was this America, and America became my dream. Let's now go to the alternatives and read if one of them matches this piece of evidence, then it is the answer. Okay. Have a look here. You could figure out the answer here is D. The answer here is D. My father was inspired by a vision. He saw something. He promised us something. It was this America, and America became my dream. Paragraph 3. Okay, let's go to question number C. From the details in the passage from the promised land, which of these inferences can most clearly be drawn about Mary's family? In other words, as if he wants to say, what can you conclude about Mary's family when you read some details in paragraph 5? Okay, let's now read here the alternatives. The family has not always been poor. The family members are not very close to one another. War and political unrest are the reasons for the family's financial difficulties. Before coming to the United States, the family knew little of the finer things in life. Okay, let's go to paragraph here 5. Try to skim and find the answer. Yeah, as quick as possible. Guys, if you look to the first sentence here, how quickly we came down from a large establishment with servants and retainers and a place among the best in, yes, in Polask, to single room hired by the weak and the humblest associations and the averted heads of former friends. Here, look at these 3 lines. Read them carefully. What can you infer here, guys? What can you infer? Or what inference can you make? Okay? And if you also read this, more than once she fainted at the doors of her customers, ashamed to knock as a suppliant where she had used to be received as an honored guest. I hope the angels didn't have to count fears that fell on her frost-beaten, aching hands as she counted her better earnings at night. Read these 4 lines, okay, and tell me what inference can you make. Simply, you can just tell me that she dislikes this kind of job because she didn't used to. When she was in Russia. In other words, she was a woman of dignity. She was a little bit arrogant. She was in one way or another showing an attitude of superiority because she didn't used to do such jobs. So what can you infer here? Let's go back to a question. Question number C. The family has not always been poor. The family members are not very close to one another. War and political unrest are the reasons for the family's financial difficulties. Before coming to the United States, the family knew little of finer things in life. What do you think? Definitely you will choose A. The answer here is A. Because I told you before that she didn't used to such jobs. She disliked this kind of job because she was a woman of dignity. She was a little bit arrogant. She was showing, okay, in one way or another, an attitude, okay, of superiority when she was in Russia. And when she moved to America, she totally disliked this kind of job because she really didn't used to. So that we could say that the inference that we can make that the family has not always been poor when she was what? In Russia. Part D. Which of these sentences from the passage best support the answer to part C? Select 2 options. Here, guys, as if he wants to ask you, cite textual evidence, cite textual pieces of evidence to support your answer. In another word, In other words, here the question says, how do you know that the family has not always been poor? Cite some textual pieces of evidence to support your answer. Let's now read these sentences. Here you should select two options. So A and B 1, C, D 1, E, F 1. My father was traveling at the expense of a charitable organization without means of his own, without plans, to a strange world where he had no friends, and yet he wrote with the confidence of a well-equipped soldier going into battle. Paragraph 3. We had absolutely no reliable source of income, no settled home, no immediate prospects. Paragraph 4. We hardly knew where we belonged in the simple scheme of our society. The allowance they made here was generous compared to their means. Affection and duty could do no more, but there were 4 of us growing children, and my mother was obliged to make every effort within her power to piece out her income. Paragraph 4. How quickly we come down from a large establishment with servants and returns and a place among the best in Pulaski to a single room hired by the weak and the humblest associations and the averted heads of farmer friends. Paragraph 5. More than once she fainted at the doors of her customers, ashamed to knock as suppliant, where she had used to be received as an honored guest. Paragraph 4. Okay. From the explanations that we provided, what can you say? What can you choose here, guys? Simply, if you go back here, if you go back to paragraph 5, okay, to the underlining lines here, let me just underline them again and again. How quickly we come down from a large establishment which with servants returns and a place among the best among the best in Pulaski to a single room hired by the weak and the humblest associations and the averted heads of farmer friends. Okay, if you read this, you could easily find the answer. Also here, more than once she fainted at the doors of her customers, ashamed to knock as suppliant where she had used to be received as an honored guest. I hope the angels didn't have to count the tears that fell on her frost-beaten, aching hands as she counted her better earnings at night. If you look to these underlining lines, you could easily understand that she, as I told you, she dislikes this kind of job, and because she didn't used to do this when she was in Russia. So here, okay, these two, okay, let's say here, sentences here, in one way or another, support the answer to part C. Let's now read, okay, the alternatives in part D here. We've read them already, okay, but let's now double check, okay, here. We could simply say the answer E and F. Is that clear, guys? E and F. Now let's go to the last question here, part E. Which of the following ideas about the situation families in the 18th in which not all of the members were able to immigrate together to the United States do the details in the passage most strongly support? So here, simply, we could say that what was the situation of the families during the 19th century? What can you conclude about the family members or the family situations during the 19th century? Let's now go to if you go to paragraph 4, you could find here the answer. Let's go to paragraph 4. Skim here the paragraph. Take your time. Okay? Just 30 seconds to skim paragraph 4 to find the answer. If you guys look at this sentence, we had absolutely no reliable source of income, no settled home, no immediate prospects. What inference can you make from this sentence? Can't you notice this sentence in one way or another represents the situations? Yeah, it represents the situations of the families in the 19th century, and it represents that the family members were able to immigrate together to the United States. Yeah. So this sentence, in one way or another, gives us a hint about the answer. Let's now go to the question itself. Okay, let's now read the alternatives. These families often struggled if one of their main money earners left for the United States first. These families had the best of both worlds because they could earn money in two different countries for a time. These families could remain comfortable if they had saved enough money to account for the wages lost during travel. These families could get along quite well if they could get help from friends or relatives to make up for the unreliable income. What do you think? Simply, you could choose the first one because it represents the answer. It represents the answer. Because if you go back to the sentence that we underlined before, it represents this sentence, that these families often struggle if one of their main money earners left for the United States first. So when her father left to America, they had absolutely no reliable source of income, no settled home, no immediate prospects. Is that clear? Okay. Let's now go to question F here, which is the last one. Select the sentence in this excerpt from paragraph 4 of The Promised Land that best supports the answer to part E. Skim this paragraph. Yeah. Take just 30 seconds and try to find out the sentence. Actually, we have already found the sentence So it's simple for you to find it. Okay. Definitely it will be this sentence. We had absolutely we had absolutely no reliable source of income and no settled home, no immediate prospects. And this question here, as if the author wants to ask, how do you know these families often struggled if one of their main money earners left for the United States first? In other words, cite textual evidence to support your answer. This is okay. How could we cite a textual evidence? We go to the text, we find out a sentence that represents the answer, that concludes the answer. We take it as it is. That is how could we cite textual evidence. And it's really important because citing textual pieces of evidence in one way or another strengthens our answer, supports our answer. So it is really important. And from now on, try to get used how to cite some textual evidence when you are reading. It's really important. Because for me, if a student cites a textual pieces of evidence correctly, that means he perfectly understands the text. Okay guys, thank you so much for your nice listening and for your efforts, for your time. See you later.